Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to Sama Saturday. We are here live today, actually, with our dear friend, Tina Makris. Welcome, Tina. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you, honey. Good morning.
Good morning to you too. And any of you that are jumping on, please let us know that you're here too. We're coming to you live today. As some of our regular followers know, Sama Saturday, which airs every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time, is a show all about holistic wellness for your canine companion. And many of these teachings, of course, apply to the humans as well. We really like to bring our attention to the ways in which we can share natural, holistic, spiritual practices with our dogs. So Tina, who is our guest today, is the owner of Intuitive Hound. She is located in Indianapolis, Indiana, and she has been on our show a few months ago, I guess it was now, and she was one of the most popular guests of all time. Because she's such a beautiful being. I love her with all my heart, and she really gets dogs. Not only is she just fun and awesome, but she gets dogs like few other people do. And so after all the feedback that I received from our last session of positive accolades about Tina and how aligned she is with the Sama Dog message, we knew it was time to bring her back on again. So do let us know that you're here with us and that you're watching, and let us know who you're watching with. If you're connected, at least let us know with a thumbs up or a heart that you're here, and kind of get that energy flowing between all of us. Of course, we're always grateful if you're willing to share this feed out there, get some more people on live with us. Tina's really good at live answer Q&A, so this will be a great opportunity to really tap into the resource that she is. So let me give you a little bit more formal introduction first of Tina. She is a trainer, teacher, and counselor for dogs and our humans. As I mentioned, she is the founder and owner of a company called Intuitive Hound. She offers through Intuitive Hound an intuitive, positive, force-free, and personalized Ayurvedic approach to dog behavior and their relationship with their humans. So you can see why Tina really gets these teachings that Sama Dog is established in, the teachings of yoga, meditation, and Ayurveda, spiritual Vedic knowledge, and really brings in, of course, this whole canine world. And into this conversation today, what she's going to bring in is really the history of the canine world. Our topic for Sama Dog overall in January is the human-canine bond. And when we think about that, when we really start to explore it, there's no way not to really get into the history of who these beings were, what they have evolved from by us, where it's like the only man-made animal. Now, I'm sure Tina will say more about that in our in creating these friends. Basically, we created friends, and we did a really good job of it, because I think we all agree that they're rock stars in this world. But just like taking some time to learn more about that, not the tradition, but the ancestry, and how this canine being shows up in front of you, and some of those misunderstandings that might come with that. So that's what we're going to dive into today. So Tina, welcome.
Yes, darling.
Welcome again. Thank you for taking your time and brilliance to be here with us.
Oh, of course. I'm just so grateful anytime that I can enter into any kind of collaboration with you, Amanda, my radiant friend. You just let me know. So I'm really glad to be here.
Oh, sweetheart. We just love you. And so, yeah, kick us off. I know we were sharing, of course, and planning this conversation, and everything that she was wanting to share about. I couldn't wait to hear. So go ahead. The floor is yours, sister. Take us.
Right on. Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. We're sure glad that you're here. Today's topic is something that I truly wish I had a chance to talk about more often, because I really feel that the evolution of the dog, which I like to call the history and also the herstory of how these wonderful beings came into our lives, I just wish I had a chance to talk about it more. So this gave me a chance to go back into my roots a little bit and say, hey, let's just pause for a moment, and let's just hit a few of what I think are the essential aspects of how the dog came to be. First of all, many folks, I don't really think, know that the dog was the first domesticated animal. It was domesticated before the cat. Sorry, my cat, beautiful people. It was domesticated even before some of the other animals. And I really think it had to do with a similar kinship that all those billion years ago, the wolf brought in to this universe. And then from that, just evolved. So I'm just going to give you a few ideas as far as a timeline that we'll start with, and then we'll move right into the dog and the human relationship. So how the wolf, our friend the wolf, came to be is somewhat of a mystery. There are many researchers and many scientists who agree, disagree on how this all happened. Dogs evolved from wolves. That is a strong theory that has happened way back when I was younger. But lately, there's another theory that's popped up that actually the dog evolved from the wolf and potentially from another ancestor. Not quite sure what that means, but the research is out there, and I'm starting to dig into it even a little bit more myself to see what really that means, because any of the research and some of the formal academic papers that I've read, they really can't nail it down to figure out exactly what that additional ancestor might be. But it's out there, and with the amazing, genomic, archaeological research, DNA coming into play more and more, researchers are they're going deeper and deeper to figure out exactly how this has happened. So here's an idea. So wolves, they trace back 2 billion years. 2 billion years. And like I said to Amanda earlier this morning, I have to ask Siri on a daily basis what day it is. So the fact that the wolf can be traced back 2 billion years is something I just can't even really wrap my head around. Now, the fact that the dog first domesticated above any other of the other animals, here's an idea on a timeline on how that played out. And unfortunately, I'll have to read my notes because it's just a lot of numbers. So here's how it plays out. 300,000 years ago, human actually appeared on the continent of Africa somehow. Then they say 33,000 years ago, a domesticated dog skull was discovered in a way that it provided the evidence that there was a domesticated dog somehow in Europe. Now, I think if you narrow down a little bit more, it might actually point and target more towards Siberia. But that's actually what the researchers are putting together. 32,000 years ago, they think there was domestic dog evidence in China. Researchers actually titled that Euro-Asia. 20,000 years ago, dogs migrated around the world with humans. So things are happening where they're coming together. And then I'm just going to jump to about maybe 10,000 years ago, dogs are firmly somehow in what is known at that time a human society. So there's a little bit of our history and herstory lesson on how those dates come together. So now I'm going to take a large leap and actually talk about the dog-human relationship, where it has evolved to, and I've broken it down into generations. So the baby boomers, the Gen X, Ys, and the millennials. So here are some numbers to kind of give you an idea on, because of the evolution of the domestic dog, where that dog now lies within the lives of these particular generations. The baby boomers. So baby boomers, roughly, we're talking about folks that are born maybe 1946, 1945, up through like 1964. So according to research, samples of polls and just in general, I think more than 2,000 baby boomers were polled, more than 2,000 Gen Xers, Gen Ys, and more than 2,000 millennials. And putting this all together, these are kind of statistics that I was able to put into a place of understanding. When it comes to baby boomers, they have a preference. Baby boomers tend to prefer a human as a companion, 48%. So almost half choose that. The Gen Xers, they prefer a human, 39%. So compared to the baby boomers at 48, the Gen Xers are at 39%. They choose a human. And millennials, which really surprised me even more, was only 31% of the 2,000 millennials polled say that they choose and prefer a human as companionship. So now let's get into the dog numbers. Baby boomers, of those 48% that say they choose a human, there's 35% that actually say that they choose a dog. Gen X, 37% of the folks polled would choose a dog. Millennials, 41%. You groovy millennials, they decide that they would prefer a dog as a companion over a human. So let me just talk about those millennial numbers one more time because they're changing the world, those kids. So 31% of the millennials say that they prefer a human, but 41% say that they actually prefer a dog. And because of that, things are moving and shaking. So what exactly does that mean as to where we have evolved? It kind of plays out this way, to be quite honest. You know, Amanda has said in some of the postings on Facebook, basically, you know, human's best friend. Why is the dog human's best friend? And I have a few theories about that. Some research believe that there's a natural kinship between humans and dogs, dating back thousands and thousands of years, and then all the way through the evolution. And I think there's a certain reason why. Actually, a few. One is we have a similar social structure. Humans, you know, back thousands and thousands of years ago, established themselves as hunter and gatherers. The dog, hunter and gatherer. The humans and dogs have a shared purpose in how they raise and educate their young, especially when it's in a group way, a pack way. And growing up, I heard this a lot, it takes a village for humans. So if you think about the social structure, there's the similarities there on how the wolf, the domesticated dog, and then the human have a similar social structure. Another is they respect elders. Elders are respected in a pack, and humans have a certain respect for their elders. I also think that dogs in particular have a need for connection, and I also think that humans have a need for connection. So if you pull together that social structure and socially how that all works, I think that humans were able to recognize that there is a partnership there, that there is a single benefit as to why they would reach out to a dog. How did a dog come to us? There's certain theories about that too. Some theories is that the humans would capture the wolf. They would capture the young wolves. And then they would forcibly actually bring them into their life that way. I necessarily don't want to agree with that as much, but I do think that it plays into how this amazing relationship came to be. I also think there was a mutual alliance, and I talked about this recently with a client just the other day, and I think that both the human and the wolf realized that there are benefits, and from those benefits there is an alliance. Now, does that mean that, you know, perhaps there was a wolf that, or even as it evolved into a dog, that they would approach campfires out of curiosity, possibly, just to see what the humans were doing? Could it be possible that after the humans hunted and gathered and left behind food, that maybe the scavenging happened and the wolves came along and finished up what we call our leftovers? I think that that's a possibility also. But I also think that in this alliance, there was a potential value that each saw for each other. Things like guarding, you know, combating loneliness, being together, the emotional bond that a dog has with a human. I believe that's all part of the origin of how this came to be. So now I'm going to shoot forward a little bit into the evolution of this human-dog bond, because I really believe that companionship and the need to connect is really what drove the human and the dog together in many different types of ways. I think early on in the origins, humans saw the dog as an object. And then from that, it completely evolved into the dog being just a immeasurable value to the human, such as farming, herding, companionship, so much companionship in so many different types of ways. The ability that a dog has for playfulness that sometimes helps us humans and gets us out of a serious nature. And I think also the overall contribution to human and society sustainability. Dogs contribute so much to that. So there were even times where the dogs have actually contributed to the income and sustainability of a family, a human family, because they were able to provide services and provide different types of value to human society. Because of that, I think the dogs started to go through physical changes, and they started to drift a little bit more away from a wolf attribute and a wolf physicality, and the proportions changed. You know, things like the ears started to flop a little bit. Perhaps the size of aspects of the wolf and as it became more of a dogginess, a dog situation, maybe physical attributes changed, as if, you know, the frightening things changed, like the teeth. Maybe those became in a smaller size. The paws were smaller. The skulls in nature became smaller. And I think that then started to attribute to temperament, right? So less frightening, less fearful of the wolf evolving into the dog, and then the dog being less distrusting, and actually learning to read our expressions, especially our facial expressions. The eye contact, I think, evolved. And we went from being, you know, separate to partners on this journey of evolution, if that makes sense. Then I really think that humans adore dogs. I think dogs adore humans. And it's evolved to a place of not just the similar social structures that set forth in the foundation, but, you know, there's similar genes that link sociability and between the dog and the human. And it's that connection, that absolute deep connection. With dogs, and I know that Amanda has said this before also, we can be ourselves. You know, they know our deepest secrets. They see us not always in our best light, not always feeling what possibly is in a positive place. So dogs can definitely bring that to us in a way that they provide loyalty and comfort and an understanding of, I think as humans now, what do we call it? We call it unconditional love. Don't you think, Amanda?
Definitely. Definitely. I think they're one of the most pure sources of that. Because because humans, I think that's why a lot of people are also drawn to children, because they don't have that identified ego connection yet, because human beings, once we do identify with the level of ego, which gets a bad name, the ego, it's really not.
Sure.
It's just our individuation. It's our part of us that makes us think that we're separate than everyone else, and there's a little more competition going on in this world. And dogs don't have any of that. They might have their territory that they want to protect, and it's kind of like you over there, I'm over here, but it's very present, and it's centered in connection to themselves. It isn't about the ego, and it isn't about their image. It's really just about their own needs, their biological needs, their ancestral needs. And when we are around them, I feel like we are able to soak up so much of that presence.
Absolutely. They really help us to live in moment in a different type of way. I had a client recently, she asked me, she says, Tina, how does my dog know what time I'm coming home? And I said, there's a lot of research out there, but one of the things that I really think it is the connection is there. And after a while, I think a dog just yearns for that human in their life. But I also think, instincts, that a dog's natural instincts are very different from ours. We are different species. And one of their most valued instinct is the use of their nose. And I think that once the human has left that environment, the home environment, the apartment, the townhouse, and has been gone a certain amount of time, the scent of that human dissipates. And once it dissipates to a certain level, I think that's when the dog starts looking for the human. So
wow, I've never thought of it like that, Tina.
Yeah, so check it out. So say if you work like a 9 to 5 kind of a schedule daily, maybe around 4:30, 5 o'clock, when you do come home, the dog marks that scent and knows exactly, okay, so they're here. So as that dissipates, they start to associate time of day, because as many of us know, dogs are in nature, in sync with nature. And I think they mark all these patterns to figure out, it's about time this human comes home. And that could be a Tina theory, but I'm sticking to it, man.
I love Tina theories. So I think what it really reminds me of is how we are more visual. Of course, we're sitting and looking at you, and we're hearing you also, but the visual connection, like if the whole screen went black all of a sudden, we'd all, even if we still heard your voice, it's like, are we going to get that back? Because that's the way we humans communicate. A lot of our connection with each other is through that sense of sight. And where dogs, so much of this lands on the sense of smell that we don't even realize what it would be like to be utilizing that specific scent as the key information source, that which helps us determine everything, that which helps us determine our decisions even. And it really is the leading scent. And that's why I'd never thought about it as the scent dissipates or as the scent is stronger, how that can be something that really is, the communication that they're receiving.
Absolutely. And probably more so is our friend Meg Harrison from Black Wings Farms, that probably knows exactly what that scent means to a dog and how delicate it is and how amazing it is. So it to me, it just blows my mind. It's like a superpower that they have, and nothing personal to our cat friends, because cats have an amazing ability to use their schnoz also. But I really believe that there's something to that, and to tap into what you're saying, we are a visual society. So as humans, that's just kind of, that's our wheelhouse. We live in a visual society, which affects our relationship with our dogs even more. The pet industry, I added up a bunch of numbers not too long ago. I believe the pet industry is probably worth more than $60 billion annually. I believe that a fifth of that, if not more, dog owners and pet owners spend on pampering their pets. There's a visual, there's a thing there. So they're purchasing clothing, they're purchasing ways that they can use a very powerful tool, especially now with our millennial friends also, is social media. And I really think that as the millennials move into an adulthood, they they bring their pet into their life, and social media, pet goes on social media. Immediately, there's some kind of a connection with the world when they do that. It's almost like a performance, or as if they are posting something for reaction, but yet they're sharing something that they absolutely love. And I have one client who really does absolutely refer to her dog as her child, and she works a day job. Her career is she works from home, and then she works 2 nights a week so that she can make sure that her dog lives the most healthiest and balanced and whole life possible. So she works that part-time job so that she has, the budget built in so that she can make sure her dog has everything that she needs. So it's truly it's just remarkable, this bond. Truly remarkable.
It really is. It's unlike anything else. That's why we can talk about it so much, is because it is unique to any other relationship, and it is very common. How many households now in America have a dog? I think it's like...
It's a lot. So from what I understood in some of my other statistics is, I think I even wrote it down because, I'm a little obsessed. More than, I think 75% of folks living in the US have a dog.
Wow.
Then some other statistics that I came across to blow that up a little bit more is nearly half of the humans on this beautiful planet have a dog in their life somehow. I mean, that's crazy.
And there's
that's
so
crazy.
much gain from that relationship, right? That's why we feel very passionately about the work we do, because it's not only about feeding our dogs well and understanding their behaviors and learning to coexist with them very well, but dogs absolutely do bring us to a deeper level within ourselves, back to the unconditional love. When we're around it, we're connected to the unconditional love within us. When we see them being accepting of themselves, they're getting older, they, have a snaggle tooth, they got a little surgery and it's all shaved on one side, and they look all lopsided. They don't care one bit. And when we're around that and we see that, we get to remember that for ourselves. And these little glimpses into the soul, as Deepak Chopra, our wonderful teacher, would say, whether you get them in meditation or whether you get them in moments with connection, you're still getting them. So they are, in fact, the pathway to our bliss, the pathway to our spiritual life, the pathway to our soul. And this is why I think many of us don't really even have the words for how our dogs make us feel or how we can feel in their presence. But I do believe that this is why, because it moves beyond the words. That's why it's hard to explain. It takes you to spirit and source, and that place of innocence and purity and light within all of us. And when we can experience that with a dog or with anyone, anything around us, it just lights that up even more inside of us and brings a lot of healing.
It truly, truly does. That same client, she actually said in that same day, she said that my dog actually makes me a better, more considerate person.
Yeah.
And I tried to say to her, so what do you think that dog thinks of you? And then she just gets really emotional. She says, I'm mature enough to know that I don't throw all of my emotion and all of my hopes and dreams into this dog as a companion. But I like to think that, that we're a team, And I'm hearing that more and more in my clients, because I really feel that, especially our millennials, I feel like my generation, the Gen Xers, many of my fellow Gen Xers, they've had some struggles as far as relationships. And I find that many of my clients will actually volunteer in a lot of my intake questions that, they come from a divorced family. They're a little skeptical. That's really the best way to describe it. They aren't necessarily going out and purchasing a house right away. They aren't finding a mate and marrying as quickly. A lot of them aren't even going out purchasing a car. They're leasing a car, but they're not necessarily even going out to do that. So I think that their skepticism in long-term commitments is different, and it's a complete shift now in the world as to how things happen. And I hear that with them. I think that, you know, they're taking now what the millennials have is they have this savviness about them. And I think that savviness is not just tech, and it's not just their screens, but they're taking what is available to them, the resources they have, and they are seeking information. And this information they're seeking has a lot to do with the pet in their life. And they really want this pet to be healthy. They really want this pet to live its full life, whatever that means. They're scheduling adventures to go on. I'm coming up with enrichment plans for them to take their individually personalized relationship with their dog for something to go do, and they build it into their calendars. Also because of this, I think, and you might agree on this also, is the laws are changing around dogs. The laws are changing around pets. And I think that, you know, millennials are driving that. They truly are in a lot of different ways. Not just, you know, in the pet industry, and they're spending a lot of money, and all of that plays out too, but health, nutrition, you know, all of that matters to them.
A deeper level of concern.
Yes.
Because I have to say, you know, in my family that I was raised into, dogs, and we were very connected to our animals. I grew up, my parents owned a pet store for many years in Tahoe, as you guys know.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And so, you know, animals were a very important part of our life, but the way in which they were viewed was still very much less than. It was still the dog. And it was still, oh, just do this, just do that. You know, they would and honestly, it was disrespectful to those animals. And I feel that now, especially as times change, as we have more of these conversations, as the millennials probably have their influence, there is a
millennials.
there's a higher level of respect and just a recognizing of the importance that they deserve, the honoring they deserve. We have
absolutely.
Question, you want to see
okay.
it?
Yeah.
So Kim says, what is your theory on why the dog companionship preference is increasing with each generation?
Gosh, that's so legitimate, that question. You know, I think that the dog companionship preference has a lot to do with a couple of things that I mentioned earlier on how generations are evolving, and how one generation has affected the next, and so forth. But I also think that, you know, as humans in a busy world, certain things visually we're attracted to, certain things have certain effects to us in a neurohormonal type of way. When we see, especially with a dog, we see how visually appealing they are to us. It's almost like as if it's the whole idea of a child. So lately, I've had a few clients that have actually talked about, you know, we're not going to have kids for a while, or I really don't see myself having children. But yet they refer to their dog as that particular companion to them, as that particular effect to them. I think that, you know, not only are we tapping into how amazing dogs are, as we spoke about a little bit ago, one in particular is service, how they help us with day-to-day tasks when we have challenges. We're tapping into the emotional depth of who they are and what they contribute to us. And I think that we're just scratching the surface, kids, on all of this. I truly believe that. But what they bring to us on an emotional level, and especially dogs and especially cats, and we can talk about that also. For example, you know, a couple of mornings ago, I was lost in a deep, bad dream. And the next thing I know, I felt a couple little kitty paws on my face, just tapping me as if to say, Tina, you need to get out of that dream, so let's wake up for a second. That's an amazing connection beyond words. The instincts and abilities that dogs have. I mean, you know, let's just reference just the devastation that's going on in Australia. But the heroes that are evolving and emerging from these stories on some of the feats that these dogs are accomplishing and contributing to what's happening. So I really think, in reference to that question, I think dog companionship in general, we are understanding them more. And as society and evolution is happening, we are paying more attention to what they have to contribute. Now, I don't want to, not forget about the baby boomers and the Gen Xers, because they do very much love their dogs and their cats and their horses. I have one client, baby boomer, and she has half a dozen horses on her property. Where she literally has full conversations and spends time with them. And that has become so important to her in her retirement, is for her. And her dog hops up onto the back aspect of the saddle right behind the seat, and they go for rides on a regular basis. So I really think that there's many reasons why it's evolved. But the most important is that unique bond, that unique connection. And it's so authentic that in a world of many inauthentic things, and a lot of chaos and a lot of information coming at us, we can pause with our dogs specifically and realize that, wow, they are the truest companion. And man, I just don't know. I think that that's one of the most amazing things to have in this chaotic world, is just to pause for that moment and just have that energy and that connection, even if you're not touching your pet, just to have it. And dogs, man, they just deliver it. They just deliver it.
They sure do. So Tina, I have a question. What do you think is, like in your session with your clients, what do you think is one of the more common misconceptions, something that you're kind of teaching to your students, that is about the ancestry of our dogs, their history, who they are, who they've evolved to be, that's a kind of a misunderstanding of who they are now?
Very good. I think there's a couple. The first one that comes to mind most recently has been nutrition. I can't tell you how many times a client, we will talk about nutrition because it's a very important aspect to the consultation and the intake of questions, where the nutrition is either they are choosing, one, to just feed the dog what their parents fed the dog, what their parents fed the dog, and what their parents fed the dog. So another option is whatever food they're bringing home, they are giving the remnants or what's left to their dog to finish. I see that happening. But more and more, I think that the misconception of dog species, human species, is finally trying to find itself. We talk about circle of life and we talk about how things come back around. Well, in the early stages of the wolf, in the early stages of hunting and gathering, and even free roaming dogs, even today, they are eating fresh food that they catch or fresh food that's available to them. We have now come around into that, to where we are coming back into that nutritional diet. We are understanding how important that nutritional diet is. I have many clients who they just think, okay, Tina, so I'm learning about raw. So if I feed raw, and then they pause every single time, and so we have to talk about it. Yes, okay, let's break it down. Protein's important, but let's talk about grains. Let's talk about bone. Let's talk about organs. Let's talk about different things. So they want to learn, and they're coming further and further along. But I do still have a handful of clients that, they literally aren't quite sure. So the nutrition they're giving their dog, it's just not contributing to the dog in a healthy way. So nutrition is one. I'd have to say. Then the other is the whole, that parent-child effect, where they really think that, I'm going to treat this dog as my baby, and therefore that and we can talk about all different types of ways, but the one that really concerns me the most is the dog is not getting the exercise that the dog species needs because they are not being seen as a dog who has an active life that needs to move and needs to have fresh air and needs to run and needs to forage and heck, throw over on the side of their back and roll in the mud. They need that. And I do see that some clients, unfortunately, they're treating that dog like a baby, and so therefore like an infant. So therefore, there's not much square footage for some of these dogs to really be, survive in a healthy way. So sometimes the homework is literally, you guys need to go outside twice a day for 15 minutes and just throw a whole bunch of treats down and let that dog forage and just breathe in some fresh air. So those are probably the two more prominent misconceptions that I have come in contact with.
It's great, Tina. Those are very insightful. And the second one about babying, making a baby rather than the dog out of the dog, makes me think of the fact that, like, when we think about their ancestry and back to their wolf days, how many miles, and I don't know exactly what it was, but I know many, many, many miles were grazed or walked every day by a wolf pack. Now, it is a little hard to see our little Lhasa Apso as a wolf, but yet our Lhasa Apso still needs to move in the day. They like not only getting their feet on the dirt and smelling the air and sniffing around, but that like forward movement that is very much ingrained into their DNA. And if they can't have that flow of energy move through them, just as much as it's important to breathe, to them it seems it's important to move in that way and move with others. Even they love, that's why pack walks are good. They all
correct
together, moving in the same direction. That's why a lot of times you won't fight or something as likely if you're on a walk together, pointing forward, moving in that direction together. They recognize immediately that pack energy. And so it is a little hard to say, oh, our Lhasa Apso needs to go out there and have a pack, walk for 5 miles. Yeah, actually it does. At least sometimes, at least a little
Absolutely.
bit. Certainly if it's having a lot of behavioral challenges, try that out.
Very much so. And I do see that, especially a lot of my clients who live in condominiums, apartments, where some dogs don't even see the outside of that apartment because they've been completely conditioned to live an apartment lifestyle for that particular client. And so I have 3 clients now that commit. I get a text message from them once a week because they all go meet somewhere. They bring their dogs and they just have a conversation, and the dogs have a conversation with each other. They intake a new environment, and just to dovetail off of that, it gets the humans out in a different way so that they can evolve, so they can be healthy, so that they can have connection, collaboration. It really is a true statement. Now, getting back to some of the things that we were talking about a moment ago about, fashion with dogs and certain types of clothing that are being placed on dogs for different reasons. There's benefit to that. I think that there's, coats, slickers. I completely understand that some of those things really do help a great deal. And I think that there's a place and a time for incorporating fashion in with our dogs for certain reasons. I'm become a little concerned when I look at a dog and I just don't see any dogginess happening with that dog. It's visually gone. And so I'll usually say something to the client about, I don't think they're in school attire today. I think we need to take some of those things off and let's get them ready for school so that we can actually have our session. But man, it brings color to the world, and I totally get it. So, I believe Vata, my beautiful friend, I believe that you bring color to the world. And I just think that we need to, say, okay, let's try some things out and see what happens, as long as everyone's safe and as long as everyone's feeling healthy and whole. That's really what's most important.
Indeed. Let's see a couple comments from our audience here.
Okay.
Kate says, hi, Kate. She says, common misconception about who and how dogs evolved. Yes, the species-specific nutrition of dogs is a new consideration. Fresh is best, brown and round and fresh. It's good to bring attention to the fact that, kibble is only about 100 years old. Well, the predominant dog health challenges have skyrocketed in the last 100 years since they've been eating kibble. And so clearly, when you look out in nature, there's nothing even like that. And to think that most of us only know that as dog food now, rather than like some sort of fresh animal, that sort of food, to see the way that our mind has landed on that as dog food is my point. And not that this is just, what did she say? Brown and round is not fresh, but yet just that thinking is currently being evaluated, and many minds are changed now. It's a very current topic.
That's exactly right. And thank you, Kate, for that too, because it truly is changing in a lot of different ways. We're taking a look at the processing aspect of how that contributes to a dog's nutrition. We're also taking a look at something that many folks don't think about, and it's how they actually take care of their lawns and the chemicals that are placed into having green grass and luxurious lawns, and how that is contributing to the overall dog and pet health. I have one client who she finally realized, with the help of a couple of veterinarians, gosh, I love a veterinarian, they're just amazing, that she was on her third golden retriever, and the previous two golden retrievers only lived to be, one was 6 and one was 8, where they developed cancer. And it took her and a couple of veterinarians to figure out what was happening when her current dog was diagnosed with cancer. And they just put it together, and she has changed everything on how she takes care of her property and the chemicals that she uses anywhere on the surfaces that she has going on. And we can talk about interior homes that way, and certain chemicals that we use, which I know that you have talked about before, and even wool rugs. Most dogs have an allergy to wool. So if they rub their face on it, their paws, there's an irritant that happens. So we could go on and on about that. But circling back to nutrition, it's just real important that we understand the needs of the dog species, and that they're not us. They are not human.
Mm-hmm. It's so unnatural. I think that's such a good point to land on, is just thinking of remembering that this is an animal, and animals, until we domesticated them and put them in our bed with their head on the pillow and the sheet pulled up to just right here. I do that with Benny sometimes. It's just the cutest thing to see him like laying on the pillow next to me. And, have his one arm even over the top of the sheets.
Oh my gosh.
As much as we do that, and it is fun, and I have a feeling I'm not alone in that, it is really important also to remember this is an animal that came from, the natural world, and how natural is this action or this application that I am using, and just kind of seeing if there is a way that we can unravel some of that. Again, back to natural healing. If you can use plant medicine rather than pharmaceuticals, the body, and the animal body particularly, really recognizes those plants, and it just immediately assimilates and improves the system in whatever way it's supposed to. Yet when pharmaceuticals come in, it's so foreign. And so we do that constantly with our human selves, and we're doing it more and more with our animals. So just, I think anything, especially for our viewers, I think something to land on is that if there's something in your life, in your dog's life, that is a challenge, especially somewhere where you're struggling, or, just see if there's anything in the day-to-day, whether it's something physical in their environment, or a way that they're being treated, or something that they're doing or not doing. See if there's something that can align them to the natural world a little bit more, and see the way that not only does that work for the body-mind, but it allows a whole kind of host of healing to happen once that blockage is released. If that was a dog that's always been held inside to get outside, suddenly its separation anxiety goes away, its gut problems ease, it's it's little the bile that is acting up inside of it, that whole microbiome is balanced just by breathing the air outside. its skin, constant chewing on its feet. We have a dog here now, constant chewing. He doesn't get out much too. I think if there was a little more stimulation. So see if there's something that's going on in your dog's life and you're challenged with that. See if there's a way that you can just plug them into that natural source from which they come a little more, and notice the way that may have a strong influence.
It's exactly right. And this is one of the things that I usually say to folks is let's deconstruct that and let's really just talk about what that means. I walked into a home the other day and the dog just greeted me, said, hello, hey, Tina, good to see you again, basically, and then went over and just started chewing on her hip and just chewing on her hip and chewing on her hip. And I just went over and placed my hand near her hip, and I could feel the radiation of heat coming off of that hip. And so we talked about, I think she's chewing on her hip because it hurts. It aches, and the weather lately here in Indy has, it can do that with the cold and the rain and the dampness and the humidity. So these are just things that we're learning how to recognize and understand that, gosh, okay, dogs, we gotcha.
We'll just put up this last comment before we wrap it up here from Becky. I've read that clothing can be detrimental when it covers up the dog's communication signals. That's interesting, huh? For instance, wearing clothing when meeting a new dog. Yeah, Tina, what are your thoughts on that? I hadn't thought about that so much either.
Absolutely. Thank you, Becky, for that. Absolutely. Dogs, they use that sense of smell. Excuse me. They also need for other dogs to move freely so that they can read on the body language. So reading body language, getting an actual scent of how the dog smells, excuse me, if they, are on medications, how old is this dog, different things like that. It really is important that there is, excuse me, a full freedom as to dogs can explore each other. I'm so sorry.
Take your time. No worries.
Little tickle.
Sometimes those little tickles come up at the perfectly wrong time. No worries at all.
I'm so sorry.
But it's a very good point to bring up. Maybe it just makes my mind wander over to, oftentimes dogs are afraid of people with hats or sunglasses or even like big jackets. And maybe that's one of the reasons
dark colors.
They can't get a read. They maybe can't even get so well of a smell if it's covered up with a lot of clothing. I mean, obviously dogs can smell more acutely than that, but at the same time, like they can't get it, their signals can't connect. And so the uncertainty brings up fear right there, maybe.
Absolutely. And it's just so important because now there's doggy colognes. There's so let's just really think about that and consider that when dogs are literally greeting one another and greeting humans.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. My wife is the best. She just brought me a drink.
She's really always helping you pay attention. It's like my Renee too. Thank goodness for our partners.
Yes, thank goodness. Someone watches out for us.
I would rather and die for sure. So. And you just got a scratchy throat, so.
100%.
Let's see. So just kind of closing it up here. Let's see if there's anything else that, just agreeing on some of what we're talking about. They hadn't seen it before. There's saying we have a huge fear of umbrellas in my house. Yeah, those. They're foreign. They can't really smell them. Just while we're on the topic, and Tina, maybe you have some hints on this too. But something that I've taken to doing in the house when animals are afraid of something, it's very simple. But for a long time, I've just been like, oh, they're afraid of umbrellas. Put the umbrella away. Instead, lay the umbrella on the floor, put treats all over it, put some flower essence in the air, some calming environment, a little bit of aroma maybe, even some calming music, like create a calming environment, bring in smells, like, a smell that calms them like their favorite bed, have that nearby, and then place get the dog into that mental space that it's receptive. And then place the umbrella down and then put some treats next to it. And the next thing you know, that dog is approaching what it was fearful of before. And then what I've seen after giving it a little time, suddenly they're sniffing up and down that umbrella. They're sniffing every little corner of it. And it seems to me that they've always been too afraid to get that close. and come to that connection and understanding of what the umbrella is, and therefore created the fear. So if we can help them to bond with the umbrella, basically, just like you would a person that they were barking at. Oh, here, give a couple treats to the pup. They'll maybe, respond nicely to that. Maybe the umbrella is just the same way, giving them the relationship, the opportunity to meet that item and have a relationship with it.
Absolutely. And to close that out, thank you, Edie, for that statement. Umbrellas are a very common, scary thing for dogs. Number one, they're unpredictable because they come in different types of displays, closed and quiet. The idea of opening and closing the umbrella and then having it fully open, that's pretty scary for a dog. Mm-hmm. Also, it captures dampness. So it's going to have different smells to it that could be just a little too mysterious for dogs when it comes to that. So they're trying to figure out, is an umbrella a thing that they are safe around that doesn't move around too much, or is it a living thing that actually moves and does things that are completely unpredictable? So a lot of the things that you just said, Amanda, really do help. And sometimes I just set an umbrella out just off to the side of a main area and just kind of leave it. And anytime you walk past it, just drop a treat near it, or anytime the dog looks at it, say, that was a really good idea. Yeah, nice job. And just give them a treat. So there's all kinds of ways to approach the umbrella, but man, it's a very scary thing. Very scary.
Yeah, it certainly can be. It can be. Well, Tina, I'm quite sure that our audience has received the beautiful intention in which you deliver your message. And my correct audience, do you feel, Tina, do you feel her love and her commitment to all of this? Give us some hearts and thumbs to get it. I certainly do.
Right on.
Lots of them from me, because you really are such a special being and have such a special way of articulating that as well, with so much love and ease and simplicity behind it.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Folks, just please remember that who you are on a day-to-day basis affects your dog. And sometimes they want to fix it, and sometimes they want to help relieve it, and they want to comfort you. So just know that you're in it together, and what you do, how you act, the energy that you have, it truly, truly does affect your dog. And man, they sure love you. So just keep that in mind.
Well, we definitely will. And we're very grateful to you, Tina. We are grateful to all of you for watching. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation, part of our community, someone who cares a lot about your dog, and obviously expressing that by connecting to the work of Sama Dog and programs like this. So from your dog's behalf as well, let us help to be the spokesperson for them and let you feel their gratitude for the commitment that you have to them. And we will keep on coming back every Saturday, 10 a.m., of course, over and over again, to deliver different pieces of information, different teachers, practitioners, inspiration to all of you. I put it up a couple times, but Tina can be found at intuitivehound.com. She's based in Indianapolis, and she has a wealth of information for those that are around her, but also for those beyond. She does tons of phone consultations and helps people all over the world. So if you resonate with her message, I highly, highly recommend you getting in touch with her. She clearly can help you not only on the behavioral side, but on also the nutritional side and the physical health, as she is a wealth of knowledge in all of these areas. So, don't hesitate. Maybe you need some support from someone like her. So, any closing words, my friend, before we sign off?
Not really, other than, thank you for doing this, Amanda, and for plugging along and always looking for new avenues to bring humans and dogs together. And I have a deep appreciation for you, and I truly love you for that.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Thank you all, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.